Hey YouTube, this is Prometheus giving you a defensive strategy breakdown. This is going to be featuring the dollar defense. Basically, it's one of the more meta defenses right now. The recent tournament has happened, the MCS, and as a result, a lot of other players are using the dollar defense, and now everybody's jumping on board on the dollar defense train. I've used dollar with a special way. I typically use the Oakland Roll, but there is other ways that you can use the dollar defense that other top Madden players use. So this is going to be probably the most comprehensive breakdown on how to run dollar defense and also the variations of it. Now, you can also find the dollar setup, this setup right here, which is basically a symmetrical setup, six defensive backs, and then two inside linebackers and two pass rushers in other different types of playbooks that are not necessarily designated as a dollar. You can also find it in the dime packages. You know, it would be like the dime 146s, the wills, and also the SAM packages and stuff like that. So really what you want to look for is just this setup, this setup, and the positional players will actually kind of interchange a little bit in the front five. So let's go ahead and talk about basically how you want to set up your defense to try to optimize it and just be a little bit more effective. Most players come out and they use the VENM Fire 2 as their base defense. I'm going to show you more stuff that you can actually use to be very effective with it. And I want to talk about a top player that I was one of the few players that I actually follow and watch, and one of the reasons is because he posts primarily only gameplay footage, and I think gameplay footage is a lot better than just basically tip footages, because it shows you how someone makes adjustments and how they adjust to what opponents are doing, how they bait people and all that kind of stuff. So when it comes to being a better Madden player, you want to watch games and just go ahead and just try to implement tips. I'm going to talk about a base defense that he uses successfully. It's very effective against the run, and it's very extremely effective against the pass, and is out of the cover 2-man linebacker blitz defense. Let's go ahead and set up a roster and go from there. Now, when it comes to setting up your roster, basically what you want to do is make sure you have your best pass rushers down at the line of scrimmage. Since this is going to be a pass-orientated defense, really what you want to do is you want to go ahead and make sure that your rushing ends are your best guys. So we have Barrett, and we also have Paul as our rushers, which is the best situation. Then obviously you can have Via or Sue down there on the line. If you wanted to have a little bit more beef, you might want to swap out Paul for Sue, but these are probably your best players right here. Now, linebackers, we have a very unique situation with the Buccaneers team. You could put your safeties in here if you don't have fast linebackers, but we're going to go ahead and leave these guys as is because, you know, how many linebackers are out there that have 92 speed? And then obviously Levante David has got 85 speed, which is fairly fast for a linebacker, but he's got all the attributes that makes this roster very special. Now, where this comes a little bit more tricky is basically where you're going to have in your defensive back situation. Our outside defenders essentially are going to be, Dean and Davis, and then we obviously have Bunting and our speed guy, and then we want to basically have another user guy that we can count on to basically go ahead and give ourselves just better users. So we're just going to go ahead and swap this guy out right here, Cottrell, for Desir, if that's how you pronounce his name. I'm breaking this down in current gen, and the only reason I'm breaking this down in current gen is because next gen doesn't give you coaching adjustments in the practice mode.
EA Sports, it's in the game.
So that's why I'm doing this in current gen. I personally play in next gen, but you can use this interchangeably, either current gen or next gen. My preference is not to auto flip the formation. And when it comes to running this defense, it's usually best to basically man align. This is going to get people over the defenders, depending on how the offense is set up. And then as far as ball in the air defense, you want to play ball. My preference is always to go ahead and focus on the QB on the option. And I've also been getting a lot more strip sacks when I actually go with aggressive. Now, we're going to leave our curl flats and hook zones as defaults because we'll make adjustments as we go. But the flat zone, which would be your sky blues, we're going to go ahead and drop that at about 15 or 20 yards, somewhere in there. We're just going to put it at 15 as our base because of how we're going to run this defense. Now, I'm going to just show you basically one of the setups for this defense. Cover 2 man is going to be one of the base defenses that we're going to come out of, so that's something that we don't necessarily have to have in our back pocket. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and swap that particular play out for basically the cover 4 drop show 2, and that'll be our other audible right there. You can leave spinner in if you're going to run this version of the defense, and the cover 2 drop, you probably want to swap that out for the DB Fire 2. And then the cover 3 sky press, you can leave that. But if you do have, if you prefer, what you can do is you can put yourself a match coverage out there just to kind of catch your opponent off guard. So one of the things that you can do is put in a cover 3 match, and that might catch your opponent off guard too. All right, so basically this is the defensive setup, and what you want to do is if you anticipate a run, you can just squeeze your line down. And then here's the main adjustment, and this is something you're going to have to practice. You're going to go ahead and take your left of screen safety, and you're going to man them up on the outside wide receiver, which is going to be off to the left. And then you're going to take that outside defender that is actually double teaming that left of screen wide receiver, and you're going to put him on a cloud flat. Now that flat is going to float up to about 15 yards depth, and it's going to stop there and wait for crossers. Now from there you're going to go ahead and blitz this guy, and this is going to be your user, and your responsibility for the most part is just to basically defend this half of the field and look for anything that might come over the top of you over the half of the field. That's your responsibility. You're just going to play over here. So ideally, you probably want to go ahead and have a faster user with the safety. So if you can get a guy that's 90 plus speed and 90 plus like change of direction, that's an ideal situation. Now, this is what you want to do too, is you want to go ahead and inside your guys just so they any kind of drag routes and stuff like that, they really stick on it. Now, the other thing too is what you want to do is you want to go ahead and try to put something over the top in the middle to protect the over the top by actually going ahead and highlighting your linebacker that's actually blitzing and putting him into a deep third or mid read or something like that that's going to go ahead and protect over the top. And then another adjustment is take that outside edge rusher and put him in a curl flat. What this does is it basically puts 3 zones over the middle that will kind of play certain things for you, and then what it's going to do is you've got man coverage all over the top. But what makes this setup really, really good is that it's very effective against the run. It's going to get people into run fits for you, and even though he fell forward for for a few yards, that is a pretty effective defense. So this is going to be a setup for a defense for you. And now I've got pass coverage, and you can see right here we get an interception because the computer doesn't see it correctly. So this is not my defense. I've actually I've been studying one of a really good Madden competitive player. His name's Black Rain. He's one of the few people that really watch his gameplays on a regular basis, and this is his base defense. This is a defense that he actually comes out, runs majority of the time, and waits for an opponent to beat him. And what makes this special is basically what he does with the safety. And he does with this corner out. Now, ideally, with your safety that's going to be using man coverage, you might want to put just a standard corner with a lot of speed, and it's a good man-to-man coverage. Also, the backside guy right here, he's going to be playing a lot of man-to-man coverage, and he's going to be usually taking on another threat, so you want to have your best corner. And then this corner that you have is your number 2 corner. Historically, you want to have someone that has good zones. So if you got a guy that plays really good zone coverages, he's going to fall in zone, and he's going to come and bite a stuff over the middle. Now, what makes this play really tick is just how you can adjust against what your opponent's tendencies are. So this is a really good play to go and use against people who like to use a lot of trip sets and stuff like that, because it doesn't give them really clean reads per se. And if he does block his running back, you're going to automatically get yourself a spy that's going to sit out there, and he has to defend against it. So I'm going to show this defense to you a couple different times just so you can see how effective it is and why you need to throw this into your scheme immediately. So once again, I'm going to set this up, and I share with you, I can confirm with you, if you practice the setups, it's fairly easy to set up. Now, from a standpoint of setting things up correctly where you don't get burnt, I would say the first thing you want to do is go ahead and take your outside defensive back, your safety, and man that guy up. And then what you want to do is you want to take that corner and put him in a cloud flat. I always start with the man first, just in case you get quick snapped or something delays, and then go ahead and put your cloud flat out there. The next adjustment would probably be your guy over the middle. And then you want to go ahead and take your one defender and put him basically on some type of an edge type situation. And the last adjustment would be like inside coverage with your defensive backs. So you can see, you know, pretty much everybody's going to have someone on them. You can see, like, everybody's got a guy that's around them, and it's not like there's a clean read or a clean area to go. If he tries to throw the C route, this guy's going to be here. You've got this bracketed. You've got this guy falling back into a deep zone, so he's going to basically be over the top of this guy too. And then essentially we're going to use this area. So probably your best bet is to try to just make sure you stay over the top of this coverages, especially if the guy's beat. But for the most part, it's just going to lock everything up. So if your opponent's not throwing you over the top, but basically is trying to hit you with a dragger on the backside, you can put a guy out there in a hook zone just to put another defender down there to take away those crossing routes. But I would recommend, if you guys are looking to try to expand your defense, I would say you probably want to go ahead and play around with this concept. If you don't want to do any kind of pressure against your opponent, because this is a good way to go ahead and just catch them off guard, show them something they're not used to seeing, and you can get yourself some pretty good stops, and sometimes you can get some interceptions running this defense. So I've used different variations of it, but you can see here you go. Here's a crossing route right there that I could have possibly got burnt, but because I read it correctly, I wanted to get back in that passing lane. So I just wanted to show this to you, see how this guy actually comes and bites out. These two guys are not playing it correctly. He's got inside positioning, so you can see this area of the field is wide open. So I have to fill that lane, and with a faster guy I can, especially with a better reaction. But everything else is pretty much locked up. You got guys that are out there playing these type of stuff, and you've got that man coverage, and you've also got this little cloud flat that will catch people if they try to hit a crosser on the backside. Now, what's cool about this is you can run basically this cover 4 drop as a variation of your defense. So you can press your guys down, or you can go ahead and push these guys out. And, you can do cloud flats if you want to with the cover 2, and then you can cross man your inside defenders and just make it a little bit more difficult make it a little bit more difficult for your opponent to really read certain things, because now you've got basically a cover 4 shell, and you got guys on the outside and stuff like that. So that's just another thing that you can do to mess around with your opponent. So these are basically two primary defenses that when I watch Black Rain that he runs. Of course, he makes other adjustments and jumps out of the defense, because he's an extremely high-level player. He's a competitive player, but he's one of the first people I saw that was running this cover 2 man, and he still runs it today against people that know he runs it, and he gets shutdowns and stops and stuff like that. I've had success with it online. You guys should go ahead and check it out too. So let's go ahead and talk about basically another defense that I've ran successfully. That is just a different look that you can add on to basically your dollar defense. Now, the play I want you to look at is going to be the Oakland Roll 2. This is and the Oakland Roll 3. These are two defenses that I've used successfully all season long. Is a change-up defense that a lot of players are not used to seeing, and they have a hard time with it too. Now, from a coaching standpoint, to run this defense, you want to go ahead and do base, but you can leave pretty much everything the same. Another thing I like to do too is I like to go ahead and change my zone drops and my curl flats. I'm going to put my zone drops at 25. I'm going to put my curl flats at between 5 and 10 yards. I want these guys down pretty close to the line of scrimmage. I'm going to leave my hook zones as is. Now, how I like to run this defense is I like to run it flipped. That's just my personal preference. And the reason why is we're going to get an extra blitzer going off the edge of the left tackle. Most players don't have a tight end on the left side of the formation. They usually run their plays as they see it in the play calling section. So you're always going to have a tight end on the right side. So I always flip the play just because I want to get the edge pressure. Ideally, if more people would play a tight end on the left side, I would prefer to have this going the original way like this and having the edge pressure coming off to the right side, just because it's getting people rolling to the left, which essentially they don't naturally run that way because there's not a lot of left-handed quarterbacks in the game. But because I want to have one less blocker, my preference is to play this defense on the left side. Now I can pick either the Oakland Roll 3 or I can pick the Oakland Roll Roll 2. My preference is to go with the Oakland Roll 2. I like just the way this defense is sets up. Now, I'm still going to go ahead and leave cover 4 drop as one of my main defenses, but I'm going to go ahead and swap out spinner for this defensive setup. And the reason I want to do that is I just want to have a man version of it, and I don't want to have guys that are going to be off the line of scrimmage that are going to be blitzing. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and take edge blitz 1 and put that in there. And I could potentially, if I wanted to, swap out that cover 2 shell and swap it out for maybe a cloud flat that's going to be on the left side, or I'd put in like the strong corner 2 fire. And basically this is how this play looks like this. Now, once again, what I like to do is I like to go ahead and take my defensive guy that's actually blitzing. I'm going to user him. And when I'm running this defense, I can run it basically with pressure, which essentially is like this. All I'm going to do is blitz down on both guys. And I'm going to go ahead and blitz down the linebackers and blitz inside with the defensive backs. And I'm basically go ahead and hover right over this guy. And you'll see that there's going to be some very, very fast pressure that's going to come in. So typically what happens is when you have your defense baseline, this guy's going to come down in the box like that. For some particular reason, in practice mode, we've got basically this guy falling back in depth. But what's cool about this your play is that you're going to get pressure in, and it's going to force your opponent to get rid of the ball super fast. Sometimes I've seen you can get a user rush in through this gap to force your opponent to, if he's making a fast read, you can go ahead and do the blitz yourself. So you can see I didn't get a clean look at the guy, but you can see because if he did block his running back, it'd pick up this guy. I'm coming in basically through the gap, and I can get a user rush against him. So that's something you're going to have to practice if you're not used to doing that. But it's good to engage and then kind of pull out of that hole to take away some reads. I would recommend, though, if you do come in and try to blitz that right there, you probably want to go ahead and put this guy on some type of a hook zone so he falls into a quick throw passing lane and actually will come down and bite and play those routes. So you can see the pressure just comes screaming off the edge. And even though the CPU got rid of it, that's fine. Most players are not going to be used to making those reads because this is going to be how you're going to set this defense up to catch him off guard. So what I like to do is I like to do a coverage version of this defense, and I'll do so by the following. First and foremost, I want to put someone in the seam, and I'll take that blitzing defensive safety, and I'm going to go ahead and put him into an inside third like so. Now, I can leave my 2 guys on vert hooks, but if I wanted to go ahead and protect the flats, what I can do is just put these guys into curl flats, because remember, these guys are basically running zone coverages where they're going out 10 yards and just kind of settling in. My preference with these guys is to put them in curl flats, not into seam flats, because they just react better to the flats in a curl flat format than a seam flat. And then I'm just going to basically use it over the middle of the field, scrape, and just hope that he actually throws. And you can see right here, really, it just locks up the deep ball, and it completely locks up the sidelines against your opponent, and it forces him to make some type of read. So the middle of the field is open, but you can always adjust. If you anticipate he's going to throw the seam, you can leave those hook zones out there, and that's going to mess up his reads a little bit. But let's just take a look at the coverage down the field. Because we get these guys at 25-yard depth, they keep falling back 25 yards, and then they pass the guy off to the safety that should be over the top of the coverage. I've got this guy playing the seam, so if you got a guy that actually uses over the middle, you can actually hit this. This would have been probably the best route to throw, but the CPU didn't see it correctly. So you can actually have this guy maybe in a quarter flat, just to give yourself a little bit more protection, primarily because he's got basically 3 wide receivers over here. But this deep flat is actually covering that up, and that's what I like about this particular play. It's very easy and effective to set up. So if you wanted to, you can leave it as just basically hook curls. If you're expecting him to go ahead and hit you on the outside, leaving the flats available. But you know, in that type of situation, you can always also go ahead and bait your opponent too, by going ahead and doing quick adjustments, hit the sticks, and then you want you to go ahead and do underneath, and that's going to give you hard flats. And what that's going to do is that it's going to basically force your opponent to go ahead and read the seams down the sidelines against your opponent, and it's going to get that flat to react a little bit better. So that's one of those quick adjustments that, you know, not a lot of people are talking about, and it's the sticks adjustment. Essentially, it's going to eliminate your zone drops and give you the opportunity to basically go ahead and just set your opponent up for, you know, a bad play. So we're going to set this up with curl flats. That's going to put some guys out in the seams. And you can see right here, he has to make a read as I pull out of the area. Now, another variation of this defense is the Oakland Roll 3. And pretty much the same type of a setup. What you could do is you could put yourself a curl flat out there, but now you're only rushing a few people, but this gives your opponent just a different type of a look that he might not be expecting. You're going to have just kind of a zone drop out there, and it's going to force him to go ahead and check things down. So maybe the Oakland Roll 3 is a good thing just to switch up into. If your opponent is if your opponent is basically hitting you off the left-hand side because you've got that coverage set up, and that flat might not be available for you to hit, one of the quick adjustments you can do to really catch your opponent off guard is you can still go with the massive blitz, but what you can do is do your sticks adjustment, and that's going to create that into a hard flat, and I want to protect against maybe some type of a seam going up the middle of the field. I can put this other guy here on the seam flat, and I'm still going to go ahead and have this really aggressive pressure coming into the inside. But now basically my opponent has to make reads a little bit better. So I want to show you how this combination of defense is going to essentially go ahead and protect against the seam. You can see how this guy actually comes out, slides out, and I'm actually going to go ahead and take the inside guy. This guy's over the top, but look at this guy. He just sits there on his flat. He doesn't move anywhere. He just stays for some type of crosser, and it just forces your opponent to make a read. Now, I did not have all the guys in the box. They were blocking 6, so in that type of situation, it's just going to be a little bit harder to read. Now, this is all fine and dandy, but you also want to have a coverage version of this. So one of the things I do is I jump into a cover 4 version, and I take the leftist screen guy and put him into a curl flat with this defense, and I blitz this guy down. Now, this variation of this defense is really going to mess up your opponent's reads, because you got cover 4 shells that he's going to have to read. And all I'm going to really do is I'm just going to run over there and basically cover the gap in the defense. But if the guy's used to attacking the flats or doing this type of adjustments, or just trying to get past these coverages and the pressure, when I run cover 4, this really messes up their reads. They don't necessarily know what to do with the ball, and it's very effective against the run too. If you anticipate your opponent is going to do some type of a hook curl or some type of a comeback route or some type of a crossing route, you can put your guys into soft squats. The only problem with soft squats out there is that you don't have basically sideline protection with your coverages. So if there's no pressure going against your opponent, which you're not going to give any kind of pressure, you could potentially give up a big play down in the middle of the field. But this is a good thing that you can do to kind of mix things up. Now, another adjustment I do with this version of the defense is I go into the edge blitz. And the reason I do this is I basically want to go ahead and try to set up a similar setup as Rain's man coverages. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and take this guy, set it up like this. And I've got myself pretty much the same type of a setup as Rain. But now I've got man coverage with different guys across the field. And it makes it a little bit more difficult for him to get his reads with this blitz. So that's what I like about this setup. It's just you got your man version of it. You've got basically your zone version. You've got your cover 2 version. You can jump into cover 3 version and whatnot. And then obviously sky press is just another way that you can get yourself just another version of this defense where you've got the cloud flats out there. And if you go with sticks, that's just going to go ahead and help you with the defense a little bit. So this is just more variations of the dollar defense that you can use outside of that dollar cover 2 blitz version that a lot of people have. This will give your opponent different looks and different and reads, and it'll make it very difficult for them to basically read this. So guys, if you've never seen stuff like that, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I try to provide you guys with the non-meta defensive setups, and if you guys are looking for some other breakdowns of different defenses I run online, I do post a lot of my stuff in my Patreon. But thank you guys for your support. Until next time.